Food is a part of our everyday life. It's very easy to take food for granted, especially in a country where eating is considered a national pastime. Feast your eyes on a picture with buffet. Tempting, isn't it? But how many of us actually think about what our food means? No, food is not all about calorie intake. Certainly, it is wise to take note of what we eat and to always eat in moderation. However, food could also reflect the society we live in. Food has always played a prominent role in literature. Historically, food is recognized as vital to our survival. Thus, we see food as a symbol of respect as banquets and offerings are always made to the gods. Such practices did as far back to the ancient Egyptians. As civilization developed, so did our literature, thus food symbolism grew more complex. In ancient Greek literature, food became a representation of fertility because they are products of our harvest. By extension, food became widely associated with women due to their roles as nurturing mothers. Perhaps the most famous of all Greek goddesses is Demeter. She is the goddess of harvest as well as the sanctity of marriage, sacred law, and a cycle of life and death. In ancient art, she is often depicted carrying corn ears or bushels of grain. The story of how she searched for her daughter Persephone was used to explain how seasons came to be. When her daughter was on earth, the world experienced her love through spring and summer. When her daughter returned to the underworld, the world went through autumn and winter. The dynamics between woman and food developed further as we entered into the beginnings of Abrahamic religions such as Christianity. Food seemed to take on deeper and darker meanings. We have the Last Supper, in which Jesus correctly predicted the betrayal of one of his disciples. Perhaps just as famous is the story of how Eve was tricked by the serpent to disobey God and eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge. Interestingly, Eve has always been depicted as eating an apple. A reason for this is that the Latin word for evil and apple is melem. Thus, food as a symbol of desire, sin, and temptation became widely introduced in Western literature. This also created the flawed belief that women were the weaker sex who succumbed to sin easily. Now this brings us a question to mind. What does Goldilocks and Snow White have in common? Yes, they are female characters from children's fairy tale. Even more so, they are females who have succumbed to temptation and sin. Perhaps this is most prominent for Snow White, whose acceptance of the apple from the evil witch can be seen as a reference to the biblical story of Eve and the serpent. Goldilocks, on the other hand, commits the sin of gluttony, sloth, and pride when she sleeps and eats at the bear's house and does not apologize for trespassing. Even in children's poetry, we see similar symbolism. In Christina Rossetti's famous poem entitled The Goblin Market, two sisters, Lizzie and Laura, encounter strange goblin men in the woods. Laura is the first to succumb to their daily cries of come by, thus she clipped her precious golden lock in exchange for their fruits. This poem also reflects the suspicion and anxieties of a society in a Victorian age of imperialism and class differences. Sweet and exotic fruits, such as pineapples, were considered a luxury only available to the rich. There was also a suspicion by the commonness of the products brought in from foreign lands. This is best seen when Laura says, "We must not buy their fruits. Who knows upon what soil they fed their hungry, thirsty roots?" Popular modern interpretations, however, are less suspicious of the foreign. Instead, modern readings tend to focus on how food is an exploration of sex and identity. Rossetti's poem can be seen as filled with abundant sexual imagery, with lines such as, "Fruits which that unknown orchard bore, she sucked until her lips were sore." Lizzie remembers about Jeannie, who should have been a bride, but who for joys brides hoped to have, fell sick and died in her gay prime. Modern art commonly depicts a suggestive scene where Lizzie tries to bring back fruits for sick Laura, only to have the goblin men tore her gown and soiled her stocking, and squeeze their fruits against her mouth to make her eat. Lizzie laughed in heart to feel the drip of juice that syruped all her face and lodged in dimples of her chin and streaked her neck. She returns to Laura exclaiming, "Hug me, kiss me, suck my juices, squeeze from goblin fruits for you, goblin pulp and goblin dew. Eat me, drink me, love me, Laura, make much of me." As a result, an innocent tale of sisterly love turns into an exploration of sex and same-gender love. In conclusion, we can see how food has evolved as a motif in literature. It started out being a symbol of respect for the gods and fertility of the land, to sin, temptation, and gender differences, then class distinction and the suspicions of foreign world, to the now common sensual representation of physical love. So the next time you take a bite of that juicy fruit, you might want to consider what your food truly represents.